Welcome, everyone. We are now live to talk about episode 8. I know you do not see on your screen the one and only, the man who brought it in his confessionals, Andrew. Sadly, he is not with us tonight. However, I have formed a great panel to talk about the episode. I have two people with me who are just viewers this season. They've been watching every single episode with us, and that is Alex and Tyler. Also, a new member of the production group that came in at the merge time. We have McKenna here to break down this episode. How's everyone doing?
Doing good.
Doing great. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to start here with Alex and Tyler real quick, and I just want your perspective of what's going on in the season so far and what your thoughts are. So, Alex, we'll start with you.
Yeah. I think this has been an excellent season so far. It was a little slow at the beginning, but then once you started having the tribals come in, I really think it really helped pump some blood into the season. You had a ton of blindsides happen that I think and they were organic blindsides that just made it very entertaining. And now that we're heading into the merge with the group that's remaining, I think field's wide open and we're about to really get into some fun.
Yeah, even after having one tribe dominate all of the pre-merge, it still looks like it's going to be an excellent season going forward.
And then McKenna, making that transition over to the production side, what are your thoughts on seeing what all went down in this episode?
Yeah, this was one that I watched just the clips of. I wasn't behind the scenes. And so it was, not going to lie, a little annoying that we did a swap right after my boot, but because I watched that challenge and I was like, man, I would have aced it and we would have been smooth sailing. But coming into the production side of everything, it was really fun to really get behind the scenes of what everybody's thinking, because in the game you are only being told what you're being told over Zoom. So now I got to really see what's in everybody's heads, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, so Cameron Church here with the comment, I was Andrew's #1 fan. Yes, Cameron, I think many people were fans of Andrew and what Andrew did in his confessionals. I know me personally, he had a rough couple goes with me at Travel Council. I did sometimes.
Oh, you raked him over the coals all the time.
Yeah, I've said it from the beginning and I'll say it again. No one's able to hide at Travel Councils with me. I will call out everyone for everything.
Oh, I don't know. I danced around a couple questions and you let them just go right by.
Well, you know what? I think he was always, from what we were able to see on the show, he was always a very good sport about it all.
Yeah.
And what I really appreciated about him was he owned his stuff. He knew where he struggled and he knew where he thought he needed to go with the placement that he was in.
Yeah. Sorry, Tyler.
He had some of the best confessionals of the season. Sad there's not going to be any more of those, but we have some good players going into the merge. I think he would have skated by if he didn't get voted out this tribal.
He's totally different playing with him than his confessionals. 100%. He was a little bit more laid back in the Zooms, and then wasn't on them for a long amount of time. So if we were on before a challenge or something like that, if we didn't have tribal right before, he would be there for a little bit. He would be on after our challenges for about a half hour and then leave. So he definitely wasn't the long 3-hour Zoom kind of guy. And then you get whacked with these confessionals while editing. I was like, oh my gosh, these are gold.
Yeah, you have a comment here from Frank. His exit confessional was on point. And just going back and touching on Andrew being a good sport, he truthfully was. Honestly, he made it so much further than I anticipated after seeing him not do so hot in the challenges. So, and that's what it comes down to in Survivor. Even if you're weak in challenges, you can find a way to get yourself further in the game. And I will say, in my opinion, he got swap screwed on this situation.
Yes, absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely. I think you were really in a situation there where most of the people on the Miami tribe would have been in that position if their tribe went to tribal council that night. It was just advantage of numbers, and when you have a big kumbaya type of alliance structure that you're trying to show with Nakota, it's not the point in time to pull the trigger to make that move right as you're about to go into the individual game.
Mm-hmm.
So there was only specific situations I saw where that could happen, but we can discuss that later. And but it was a hard pill to swallow for him, I feel.
Yeah. And going to the plan that Morgan had of, let's try and like make sure he doesn't have an idol and make sure he doesn't play it, even if he's lying to us that he doesn't have an idol, of let's bring Corey in, I'm on the bottom. Even if Andrew didn't believe any of that, it was still his only option to go with. And if somehow Morgan was telling him the truth, then hey, cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great move by Morgan, honestly. She was able to make Andrew feel somewhat comfortable, get as much information as she possibly could. So on her end, that's brilliant. But let's talk about the tribal council a little bit, where Frank does indeed call out Morgan and tells Andrew to vote for Morgan. As viewers, Tyler and Alex, what were your thoughts seeing that go down?
I didn't think there was any way Morgan was going home. Morgan was the person that told Andrew that he was probably going to get votes anyways. So I think Frank was just piggybacking off that.
Yeah, I feel like, especially because you do get the impression that a lot of people saw Frank's game in the mini. So I feel for Frank's position, that sort of made sense for him to do that, just because it's typical Frank. Frank's straightforward. He will just say straight up, hey, vote for this person if you want to survive. That's what's going to be. I'm sorry. That's how it goes. So you had that, but there was a little part in my mind that remembered from the previous episode, Frank's opinion of Morgan as a player, and him and Corey both wanting to remove her from the game because they saw her as a strong player and someone who could be pulled to other people that aren't them. So I knew it wasn't going to happen, but it allowed the train of thought to happen at the same time.
Yeah, Frank's confirming that was all planned. Morgan knew I was going to do that. But, I mean, she did play it off well.
Yeah, she did.
Yes, very well, because it looked like Frank did that very spur of the moment, because she had a very like, whoa, what?
Yeah. And it came across as an organic reaction and not a staged one. So bravo to her for showing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of want to talk about the challenge and what could have happened with a few scenarios of different people going to tribal councils and matching up with others. We could have seen 2 tribes go where it would have been 3 former Nakota, 3 former Miami. So I kind of want to talk through those scenarios a little bit. On the one tribe of Nakota, we had Ian, Mikey, and
Logan.
And then on another tribe, we had Phil, Denny, and Jeremy. So with that scenario, you have 3 Miami and 3 Nakota. So if that would have happened that way, what do you guys think would have happened?
Well, I know Phil definitely wanted to reconnect with the specialists that were on Nakota, and Ian and Jeremy are really tight, so I don't think they would have turned. I think they probably would have tried to get Logan, but Logan is tight with Denny, and Denny is tight with Pook. So we might see a 3-3 split.
Yeah, definitely. I could have seen that happen. Like you have to assume in that situation that Phil was going immediately back to the specialists. He picked Jeremy for a reason, and he had the connection of that 6 with Ian, and there was something that was going to happen there. You could have seen Ian's desire to want to get Denny potentially removed from the game. So she could have been on the chopping block, but I could have easily seen Pook out there. Like the game could have been a lot more interesting if those 3 pairs went to tribal.
Yeah.
I think ultimately Pook would have went home just because of what Phil said earlier in the episode about him voting him out if Pook came to Phil about voting McKenna out.
Do you think Logan would have gone for that, though? Because I think in that instance, with that how that vote would have gone down, Logan would have been a factor because I don't know if he necessarily would have turned on Pook in that instant. So what I'm thinking, if it went down to that scenario, I'm thinking maybe Rocks, or Phil still has that idol. Maybe Phil plays the idol.
I don't know if Phil would know who to play it on for his side. Maybe him, because with Pook and Denny on the other side of that 3-3 split. Yes, we all know you would have gone after Pook, Phil. But with the Pook and Denny being on the other side of that 3-3 split, they might want to get Phil out because he's out for revenge. So Phil might have played the idol for himself, knowing that they're out for revenge.
Yeah, and I would just say in that situation, I could see the only way Logan, I think, would go with them was if they weren't targeting Denny. Because we see that she's part of his plans, he's part of her plans. If they were saying Pook, I think maybe he would have been more inclined to do it, as long as it meant that the person he wanted to keep safe was there. If that wasn't the case, I think, yeah, like you guys said, I think they tried to put a vote onto Phil and try to just go to Rocks that way and hope someone cracks under the pressure.
Well, I also know from talking with Ian that he said he wouldn't really go to Rocks for Phil. So if people were pitching Phil, then I feel like Ian could have been the swing votes for if they're voting Phil out, and Logan would be the swing vote if they're voting Pook out.
Yeah, I think more people are likely to go to Rocks for Pook than they were for Phil.
Mm-hmm.
I think Denny would have went to Rocks for Pook.
100%.
Yeah, it's interesting being able to play all these scenarios through. And honestly, we were very much hoping that we would have gotten something like that, because it's so tough when it's 5v1. I mean, what are you going to do? And if Andrew had an idol, that would have been gold. But he unfortunately did not have an idol. So then we just see basically an easy vote off and then transition there into the merge. So with that being said, I have couple questions for all three of you that I want to walk through. Number one being, who is the person you are rooting for on this season and why? We'll start with you, Alex.
So it's always me that goes first. Okay. There's so many people that I'm rooting for, really. Just from getting to know them before their season even aired, and just who I've connected with. I'm going to go with people that I think are playing the best game. So I'm going to give a few, and I'm sorry about that, but I'm loving how Denny has played the game. It's how I feel I would have taken the similar approach in that type of layout if that's how the season had started. I think she has played it pretty well, even if she doubled backs on some of the votes saying, oh, maybe this was the wrong person. I feel she's the type of player that can bounce back from that because she has built connections with people that are on Nakota's side. So I feel like her game is just beginning now that we're getting to the merge. But then on the Nakota side, you have to always have Frank in the picture, just because it's his style of game that you see. Like you see if you give him an inch, he'll take a mile. And when he takes that mile, you're not getting any close to getting him out. So you have to have the perfect situation to get him out. And then you just have Logan there as well, just being the filter of all the information. I don't think people are going to be looking at him as much as them because Frank's so out there. It's sort of easy to be shielded by him.
I'm going to go with Corey, just because he's got ties with both sides. He's number one with Denny. My winner pick was Morgan, but the last couple of episodes, people have been seeming to butt heads with her. So I'm hoping she can recover from that. But I think Corey's probably playing the best game overall. I was going to say Denny, but Alex already took her.
So my heart is Phil because he was my number one. He has the idol. Like, I want him to do well. But my head, for sure, Denny, 100%. Robbie actually, in a Zoom that we had after the last recap, he was like, if you had 3 fire tokens and you had to give them out after you were voted out, who would you give them to? And one would go to Phil, and then the other 2 would go to Ian and Morgan. So, like, those are the 3 that I want to do well. Jeremy and I have a little bit of a rivalry, so I'm not going to mention him, but
So it seems like you guys are all somewhat in the same ballpark with who you're rooting for on the season, who you think their gameplay is doing much better than the rest of the people. So that gives me my next question. Out of the remaining players, who is playing the worst game and why?
Oof.
Can we start in reverse order this time?
Yeah, we can start with McKenna on that.
All right, so I feel Logan's not playing a bad game with being the person to be the therapist, be the if someone gets blindsided, be the I'm sorry person, but he really needs to take a step out of Frank's shadow, because the way it's perceived from when I was on Miami, that Frank was just puppeting Logan. Now, some of the confessionals that I've seen leading up to this, with Logan saying everyone's coming to me to do these things, why I'm the young guy, he's explaining his game a lot better in confessionals than he is in the actual game.
I want to pause and touch on that real quick. So we see that many times in Survivor where people bring it in the confessionals or are able to articulate what's going on in the game. But as someone that's playing in the game with that particular person, they don't really see what they're doing. And then when they go back and watch the show when it's airing, they're like, oh, crap, this person had a way better game than I knew about.
Yes. So in game, I'd say Logan's not doing too hot. If you're watching it, you'll be able to see that Logan actually has some game to him.
Frank says Logan is a real boy, not a puppet.
I do agree with the Logan. I don't think he's playing a winner game, especially if he takes Frank to the end. But I'll probably go with Rob just because I haven't really seen much on him. Probably because they haven't been to that many tribals. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does going forward.
Yeah, so that's where I want to bring it to. It's not necessarily who's playing not a winner game at the moment, but it's who aren't we seeing? Because if we're not seeing them, there's a reason for it. And we've seen everyone from Miami's side. I think Denny has upside. Say what you want about Pook, but Pook is able to get people to trust him in the game. So you can't say that he's playing the worst game at the moment. And I think Phil, he has the idol. He's good at puzzles. He's about to go into an individual game setup where that can suit his skills a lot better than being in a team or having to rely on a team to get safety. So I think he has somewhere where he can go. Now, if we go to Dakota, we've talked about Logan, we talked about Frank, and we know Corey's game. The rest of the people on the tribe, for now, we don't have as much of a pulse on what they're doing. We haven't seen Jeremy really talk any game. I don't know what his strategy is, unless it's just stick with the specialist. Rob's game, he said it tonight, we're just going to keep chipping away so that we can get to 8 strong. Every single person who said that in a real game of Survivor, they don't last long because they're too comfortable in the, let's just stick to the 8. Let's stick to the 7. At some point, you have to realize, maybe I'm 8. Maybe I need to make the move. So I need to see them step up and really show what they can do here. But I don't want to judge their game because we haven't seen it.
And I also just want to touch on Purple Jeremy here because he just hasn't sent a lot of confessionals also. So there's that factor that you have to play into this as well, because we're not on the island. We don't have a giant production team to get confessionals from people. So if they're not sending in confessionals, that's why Andrew didn't have a confessional in his boot, because I didn't get one from him. So that is also something, an outside factor that you have to consider. So Jeremy might be playing a great game, but 1, he's winning, and 2, he hasn't sent in a lot of confessionals, so we don't really know.
So next I want to touch on this. Who do you guys think has made the best move of the season, and who do you think made a bad move for their game of the remaining people that are left?
Pook and Denny, probably made the best move by getting McKenna out, because getting McKenna and Ian together is probably going to be pretty bad for everybody else. The worst game, I have no idea.
I would have to say, between maybe even before the McKenna vote, having them get John out when they did was like sort of like set the McKenna vote up at that point. I feel the worst, and it's like I think both sides are coming from Ianya because it's not really spoiler. They were in most of the tribals, and the other two tribals were clean sweeps on both votes. So really, I think the bad vote that happened was probably for John and McKenna voting out, or they didn't vote them out, but vote out Karen, because I think Karen would have been someone who would have been loyal to who she needed to be loyal to survive those rounds, and I think through that she would have built enough trust with them to really push forward, and they could have been safe at that point.
So I think Pook did not make a good move with voting me out, because knowing what I know about Ian, Morgan, Jeremy, they did not want to work with Pook, but I could have bridged a connection to try and get the four of us plus them three, maybe Rob, to make the eight of us a group to eliminate the other side. Now, also not knowing the closeness relationships of Denny and Pook to the other side, but I'd say Ian, Jeremy, Morgan for sure aren't going to trust or work with Pook because they didn't trust or want to work with him in the beginning, and without me working with him through the pre-merge to try and calm them down, being all right, he's fine. Best move, I think, Denny flipping in the original one, because that kept her safe, and then she got to form real ins with the six of us, and that was keeping her safe even when she was eligible for votes, because we could have just been all right, thanks for your vote, the specialist got the lead, have a nice day. But we wanted to keep her around because she made all these relationships with us.
And I want to touch on that real quick. So it was never a thought when she did flip to you guys, hey, since she flipped, she's the next one to go. Never a thought?
Her social game is just that good, where you connect with her and you're all right, cool, we're good. And there was no my mentality of oh wait, she flipped, she could do that again. She's just that good.
Which brings me to a little bit, I want to talk about some alliances here. Who do you guys think has the strongest alliance?
Frank, Corey, Logan. And then Denny has alliances with many people. So she has alliance with Corey, Logan, and Frank. But she also has one with Pook. So she's aligned with many people to keep her safe. But I think the strongest one is Frank, Corey, Logan.
Yeah, Frank, Corey, Logan.
You have to agree, just based off what we've seen, that three seems very tight. But if you go for who's the most insulated, then it would be Denny heading into this.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement with Denny being the most secured player going into the merge.
There's really not that many people wanting to go after. I think the only main people that could be targeting her, maybe Phil, because she burned him by getting McKenna out. Ian could to try to bring in some numbers to try to go after her because he sees her as a threat. But outside of that, there's a lot more people who want her in the game for them than not.
So I want to talk about a couple people's gameplays real quick in terms of how they can get to the end. So I want your opinion, what is best for them to do to get themselves further in the game and to ultimately win it. So let's touch on Phil real quick. What does Phil need to do in this game to get himself to the end and to win?
He's got to play his idol correct first. That's a big one.
He's got to be a big boy. And yes, they blindsided me, but work with them. They have the connections. Just stick with them and then try and make a move late game, because with going somewhere crazy, he's just going to alienate himself. So stick with them. He'd be on the bottom any direction he goes. So
yeah, it's going to be a climb up for him in either direction, as has been said. I think it's not necessarily about him playing that idol, or like Tyler said, play correctly, but if he can find a way to re-insulate himself during this merge round, he could find himself in a position where, sure, he's on the bottom, but he may be in the bottom of a majority where he can stick around, preserve that idol for when he needs it later on in the game instead of having to waste it on this next vote. If he can keep any type of paranoia that we all get playing these games in check and really just go back to Ian, find some numbers, secure themselves to create that warfare. Because even if he can spark the warfare to happen and be unsuccessful, he's not the one who's going to be in the forefront. It'll be Ian or Frank. It's going to be the bigger players that we've been talking about that are going to get the brunt of some of these votes coming up.
All right, let's talk about Pook's game.
Where do you want to start?
What does Pook need to do to get himself to the end, and what does he need to do to win?
Oh gosh.
I think he's also like, I think anyone from that side is in a tough spot, just because if the other side's too afraid to try to make a move within themselves, they're the ones up on the chopping block between him, Denny, and Phil. Phil has his idol, so if he knows it, if someone feeds it to him that it's going to be him, he can play his idol. Denny's well insulated. I don't see her ending up being the full target. I think she's the one who, if they try to target, that's when they fracture. But he just needs to play a survivalist game.
He needs to let Denny do the talking. If he starts doing the talking, then he's going to get paranoid. He's going to start saying something wrong that Denny's going to have to then clean up the mess from.
Yeah, Denny's got connections with Corey. Corey's got connections with Frank. Pook just needs to lay low for a couple.
Lay low. He can skate through, not try to spark something up. Just coast.
We also have to take in consideration, we don't know how firm it is, but he also played in that season 1 mini. And most of them are still in the game. So you could have a season 1 mini grouping come up at the merge to protect one another.
Exactly. Yep.
That's the thing too, with everyone playing in so many different games, there are so many potential people that could go, hey, I'm going to go work with this group because I played a game with them, or I can work with that group because I played with them as well. So when you have so many people that have been part of seasons together, it's picking and choosing which people to actually align with that are going to get you further in the game. So that always plays a huge factor in any type of these ORGs.
That's why I feel like Morgan, Jeremy, and Ian are a little bit, and Phil are a little bit screwed here, because everyone else has alliances or has played or has other trust with other people. So you can get as close as you want in this game, but there's that pre-existing factor of we did something else together.
It's always going to be a factor as well.
Well, then, since you brought them up, McKenna, let's talk about Morgan, Ian, and Jeremy. What is best for them that they need to do to get further in the game and get to the end?
Not stick Nakota 8, because that is just they're just gonna be on the bottom of that Nakota. So they have to try and get like Pook, Denny, Phil. If Denny doesn't stick with, just try and get some numbers to take out someone else in Nakota.
Yeah, it's complicated because of those relationships. Because in my mind, they wouldn't want to bring in Denny. That may be someone that they would want to target. So they would want to obviously bring in Phil. I don't think they'll have a problem bringing in Phil to be among their like mini faction. The issue would have been then they would have needed Pook, or try to pull a carry, or someone that
Morgan and Rob are close. So maybe
Oh yeah, you're right.
More.
Yeah, we have seen that
Morgan.
connection with Morgan and Rob. And I just want to touch on this too. Even though we talked about people have played in past minis with each other, when you're talking to people 24/7 and you were on a tribe that didn't go to tribal council for so long, you're able to create those connections and bonds with people that might have previous existing relationships.
but they were never really able to test them. Miami got to test those relationships. And with Sam and Annabelle being all unanimous votes, they're still not testing anything by going to tribal.
Yep, and we'll see that coming up.
Yeah,
Who's going to be aligned?
Yeah, it's going to be a who shoots first.
Yeah, and they have to shoot first if they want to get farther in the game.
Essentially, how they need to do to survive is they need to bring in Phil. They need to still pose the guys of being Dakota 8. Maybe I wouldn't even tell Rob yet at this point. Like, figure out who the target is that they're going for. If they're trying to split it, figure a way. Like, okay, we know where it's going to get split. Phil, use your idol on this. Us 4 are going to vote for
Right.
whoever, and then you crack it. Like, vote for Corey, vote for Logan, vote for Frank.
Because
and
if they can do that, it breaks, like you said, breaks the game up completely.
So I guess I will touch on this real quick. We're at the merge. It gets crazy. People will not be disappointed. I can promise you that, because there's a lot of TV gold that comes up in these episodes. So it's definitely at this point anyone's game. So I do want to ask, coming up with this merge, who you guys think is going to be the first person voted out at the merge? Alex and Ty.
Yeah,
Pook.
I can't answer.
I think Pook's going to get voted out first. Just because I think they're going to try to stay 8 strong. I don't think they're going to try to swing first. I think it's going to be between Phil and Pook. I think Pook's going to have the majority of the votes. I think Phil keeps his idol, though.
Yeah, I'm sort of on the same page here. Unfortunately, I know every round we've gotten to talk about Pook and what Pook is doing in the game, but that this might be the curtain call, unless what we just talked about earlier happens. In which case, I could see either Frank or Corey going in that scenario.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. But like I said, viewers will not be disappointed. That is for sure. Kind of want to wrap this up a little bit. I know, Tyler, you mentioned that Morgan was your winner pick. Alex, who's your winner pick?
If I have to stamp it down, I'm going to stay with Denny.
All right, we're going to see what happens. Tyler has Morgan. Alex has Denny. So, what do you think?
Phil's the winner pick. Come on now.
And Phil's McKenna's winner pick. Okay. So, thank you guys all so much for joining me tonight. This was an absolute blast. I'm glad we were able to break down the episode, talk about predictions, talk about what you thought of people's gameplays. It's been great. Everyone else, the next episode will be dropping on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern time, and then we will be back at 9 p.m. Eastern time to recap the episode, maybe have a next interview. We'll see. Surprise, surprise, always. But thank you guys so much for joining me. This has been an absolute blast.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you.